What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. We're here breaking down this Thursday Night Football showdown slate between the Miami Dolphins and the Cincinnati Bengals in a game that looks pretty fun on paper. And after the past few showdown slates we have had, I'm looking forward to this one. I'm just hoping I can actually watch it because, as you can see in the background, I had the plants in here. It's really the only place they could go. But I live in Fort Myers, and if you know anything about what's happening in Southwest Florida this week, Hurricane Ian is coming right at us. I am right in the direction of where the eye's about to go. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I am planning on not having power, so I have to record this video a little bit earlier than normal. So if I do miss some important news, that is the reason why. I'm not even sure this video is going to be able to get posted. But if you're watching this, well, hey, maybe I had power for a little bit. But it's not looking too promising, so I do apologize again for having to record this so early. But I just trying to be a little bit careful here because I didn't evacuate because I'm a little dumb. But anyway, if you are brand new here, my name is Chris Pennell. I break down NASCAR and NFL DFS each and every single week on this channel. You can also find me over on Stochastic when I'm in season doing their NASCAR and baseball live before lock shows. Also writing some articles over on the website if you ever want to check those out. And if you do end up enjoying today's free content, the only thing I ask in return, if you could just leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell if you're brand new so you're notified whenever I post new content. And feel free to leave a comment down below saying whatever you want to say because I have no control over you. Just try not to make it too rude so I don't feel too bad. And don't forget to check out the sponsor of the show, Prize Picks, because they do make these videos possible. And as of right now, if you're new signing over on the website, you can use promo code CPEN, take advantage of the instant deposit match bonus deal that they have going on up to $100. And there's no strings attached. It is free money. Please use it to your advantage either on prizepicks.com or you can use the link down below. And yes, I know, I'm wearing lipstick. I'm not really, but it looks like I am in the camera. I don't know how to stop it, but you don't have to comment on each and every single video. I get it. You're not original. But anyway, without further ado, let's get right into it. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. Just going to go through each position here. Then at the end, we're going to run the optimizer and see who's getting spit out the most. And we'll build a lineup as we progress through this. And I do have some good news. If you do want access to the spreadsheet, Patreon no longer will charge you on the first of the month. It's whenever you sign up, and then it's like a revolving month or 30-day thing, you know how it should be. So if that's why you never like to sign up on Patreon because of the first of the month thing, they changed it. So if you sign up on the 28th or 29th, they'll charge you on the next 28th or 29th or whatever corresponds. So that's some pretty good news, but you got the projections, the optimizer, all that fun stuff. Covered the NBA, baseball, and NASCAR, and my Discord community. So if you want to come in, check it out. Got the optimizers, pretty fair price point, and try to do a lot of good work on there. Anyway, let's get into it. So we have Joe Burrow up top here with Joe Burrow, who's only $9,600. And honestly, I think both quarterbacks are a bit underpriced. I was surprised they weren't in the five-figure range, but as you're going to see as we talk through this, once we go to the other positions, there's some really good wide receivers on this slate. Obviously, you have Mike Gesicki as well, Joe Mixon. So I guess it makes sense where the quarterbacks are insanely priced, especially since they don't really offer rushing upside. But I do think since they're in the 9K range that they might go a little bit over-owned in the captain spot. And while that's fine to have them in the captain spot here and there, they don't really rush the ball that much. They're not Josh Allen. They're not Lamar Jackson. For them to go off, one of their pass catchers, I mean, obviously multiple can, but at least one of their pass catchers has to have a great game. And I would rather have them in the captain spot than I would the quarterback. So if you're playing in tournaments, that's the way I would lean. But Joe Burrow here gets a good matchup versus Miami. They are currently giving up the most points per game to the quarterback position. We are dealing with small sample sizes. And to be fair, they have faced Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. It doesn't get much tougher than that. So maybe they're not going to be that bad as the season progresses. But Joe Burrow's no slouch either. I know it hasn't been a hot start for the Bengals this year, but it's really tough to guard T. Higgins and Jamar Chase all day. And Miami's just been getting shredded this year defensively. 25.5 point implied team total at home here. For the Cincinnati Bengals, I think Joe Shiesty's going to have a really nice game. 270 passing yards per game, 2 passing touchdowns. They've been throwing the ball a lot. Only 6.5 yards per attempt, and surprisingly, 24 rushing yards per game. But I like the passing attack here quite a bit, and it's always really easy to stack Burrow because you know where he's getting the ball to. And then Tua, as of right now, it's not a given that he plays. It looked like he had some scrambled egg brain at some point last week, but apparently it was not his head. I don't know how it wasn't his head. He looked concussed. He was stumbling. He had to be helped up. I have no idea that doctors work some magic to get that quality back injury, but assuming he plays and he's good to go, I mean, he's only $9,400 and he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki to get the ball to, and that's a pretty good trio of weapons to get to. And the running back situation, I wouldn't say is amazing for Miami. So yeah, they should do some damage to the air here versus Cincinnati. They do come in as 4-point dogs on the road, 21.5 point implied team total. And Tua is averaging nearly 310 passing yards per game on the season on 32 attempts and 9.2 yards per attempt. And I believe I read a stat where he has been the most accurate passer down the field this season. So we'll see if that holds up. I know arm strength's always been a concern for people with Tua, but he's got great weapons, and this has been a fun offense this year, and the defense hasn't been great, so it should make it fun for fantasy purposes. The Bengals are allowing the third fewest points per game in the quarterback position, although I wouldn't say the schedule has been too daunting for them as far as quarterbacks are concerned, especially when you take into account they've played Joe Flacco and Cooper Rush. I forget who they played week 1, but either way, it's not. Oh, and Mitch Trubisky. So, I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense they've been pretty good versus quarterbacks this year. But I like both these guys, although if they're going to be a little bit overowned in the captain spot, I'd rather get the pass catchers because I think it makes more sense. And moving over to our lineup, not going to do anything fancy here. And look, I have nothing at all against using one of these quarterbacks in the captain spot. But for me personally, if I'm playing tournaments, for them to go off, one of these pass catchers has to do it. Now, it's a little bit tougher to figure that out. Now, obviously, all these guys could end up having good games, but I am going to just plug them both in the flex spot at $9,600 and $9,400. They're not even top 3 most expensive, so I really think you are getting some pretty decent prices on these two guys, and they obviously have 20-point upside every single week. And moving on to the running back position, obviously does not have quite the luster that the quarterbacks and the wide receivers will have on this slate, so I can't imagine they're going to be extremely high owned, although Mixon's obviously going to get ownership because of the volume that he sees every single week. But man, he has been bad with his touches. But we'll start with the Bengals group here first, which is basically a two-man show between Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine. Feels like a ridiculous price on Perine, although he did get most of the carries late in that game, and he looked a lot better than Mixon. If you're looking at their numbers this year, obviously Mixon's the guy getting the bulk of the work, but he's at 2.8 yards per carry compared to Perine being at nearly 5 yards per carry. Now, it's a bit of a smaller sample size. Obviously, Mixon's still going to be the guy here. And I'd have a really tough time paying $7,500 for Samaje Perine, but he did get some work late. Had 9 carries in that game, and Mixon has been pretty bad. He's just been lucky he's getting targets, 6 targets per game this year, which equates to a 16% target share. But I'll tell you right now, if Mixon does not fall into the end zone, he is not going to be someone you want on your roster because he's not really getting there on yards alone. If he catches some dump-offs, sure, but when you have guys like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, we know those guys, I mean, at least one of or two of them are going to have great games. And you're going to get stuck with Joe Mixon. Yeah, the volume's nice. Say he gets 18 carries, but if he's going to end the game with around 60, 70 yards, you better hope he scores because he's not going to be as good of a play as the other guys, especially on a PPR site like DraftKings. Although, I mean, the targets have been nice for him, but I'm not sure we can count on that many just going forward this season. And Perine, power to you if you want to play him at this price point, but it's a bit high for me. Maybe some sprinkles and tournaments, but if I'm building a 3-max or a single entry, I'm not getting the Perine. Moving on to the Dolphins, two-man show here between Chase Edmonds and Raheem Mostert, and they make it easy for us because they have been basically the same exact thing this year. Both are right around 26 yards per game, both seeing around 7 to 8 carries, 3.4 yards per carry compared to 3.3, and I mean the receiving works pretty much the same too. I'd feel safer with Chase Edmonds more so in the passing game, but when I can get Mostert for nearly $2,000 cheaper when he's probably going to see similar volume and they play around the same amount of snaps, I will just take the discount with Mostert. And moving on to the fun part of this slate, we have the wide receivers, and we are absolutely loaded. We will start with the Cincinnati Bengals first, which we have the stud Jamar Chase at $11,000, T. Higgins $8,200, and Tyler Boyd at $7,000, who had a nice long touchdown last week. And we also have Mike Thomas. He played on 13% of the snaps last week, but it's really nothing too significant. So we'll stick with the big three here with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. Now, obviously, Chase is always going to be the guy you want to get to the most of. He's averaging 11 targets per game this year on a 28% target share, 34% market share of the team's air yards. T. Higgins seeing 6 targets per game, although this can be a bit skewed because he did leave that one game really early because he got hit in the head really hard, had the concussion, so that is skewed a little bit, but he had a decent game last week, and then Tyler Boyd had the nice long touchdown. Now, T. Higgins is going to be a guy I probably get to a lot of. I mean, at this price point, he usually has somewhat similar upside to Jamar Chase. Now, Chase's ceiling's insanely high, but T. Higgins, he's also a first-round pick, a couple years ago, and he's pretty darn talented, and he's like $3,000 cheaper than Chase. So while Chase is the guy who's going to project the best, and he's got the highest ceiling, it's really hard to avoid Higgins there. I mean, he's probably going to be a cash game staple for me at that price point. He should get you probably close to double-digit targets in this game. And Miami's had a very beatable defense this season through the air. So, yeah, I'm liking Higgins a lot. Obviously, love Chase I'm not like in love with Boyd. He's all right, but T. Higgins' price point, it really does get me excited. Then moving on to the Dolphins, we have two studs in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Like, I don't really think Higgins should be that far off of these guys. Like, yeah, they're good, but Higgins is pretty good too. I feel like he should be around $9,000. I agree they should be more expensive, but it just feels a bit underpriced. Both these guys have been killing it this year. They're the two main guys who are going to play nearly all the snaps. Then you kind of have a mixture of mediocrity here with River Craft, I believe that's how you pronounce it. Cedric Wilson, who's currently questionable for this game, but he doesn't really do anything either way. Then Trent Sherfield here, $1,400, who I believe was the guy that got the ball punted right into him last week, so I guess that can be his claim to fame. It's really all about the two studs here with Waddle and Tyreek Hill. If you have one of them in the captain spot, make sure you pair them with Tua, or if you have Tua in the captain spot, you got to make sure at least get a couple of these guys mixed in there. If I had to pick one of these bums, it'd probably be Trent. He played the most snaps last week, but they just barely see any targets whatsoever. And you got to keep in mind Mike Gesicki is there too, even though he's not really getting that many targets this year. He's still a viable option. So really all these guys are just, you're really hoping to just catch a ball or two. And maybe you get lucky with a touchdown, but I would certainly not count on that. But if Cedric Wilson does miss, that at least solidifies some of the snaps for these guys. So moving back over to our lineup, I like all the receivers. I mean, take your pick of whichever one's your favorite. But for this build, I just want to see if it's a little bit more flexible. So I'm actually going to captain T. Higgins. Like, nothing wrong with Chase, but 16.5 compared to 12.3. Maybe he doesn't quite outscore Chase, but he doesn't have to when you're that much cheaper. So we're going to plug in T. It leaves us $6,200 left for the last few spots. I would like to fit in another one of these wide receivers, but we're going to talk about tight ends, defenses, and kickers first, and we'll see which one we can fit in. Moving on to tight ends, I wouldn't say it's the most exciting position in the world, and it's actually kind of funny because both the starters on both teams, they both got outsnapped from the tight end 2 in week 3. So we'll see what happens there. We'll start with the Dolphins here first. We have Mike Gesicki at $5,000 and Durham Smith at $2,800. And like I said, the tight end 2 outsnapped tight end 1 on both teams. So, I mean, I'm not sure we'll see that going forward. But Gesicki, he always used to be a very viable play. But, man, with Tyreek Hill now here and the Dolphins, he just does not really see much work at all. He catch a touchdown versus Baltimore, but we're only seeing 2 targets per game and 16 yards. I think he had like 1 catch for 6 yards last week. We're talking a sub 6% target share. This offense is basically just Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, which I don't blame them. I mean, they're both very, very good players. So I don't really see the need to feed Mike Gesicki that much. I mean, he's got talent, so the upside's there, but I'm not super excited about it. The Bengals haven't exactly been great versus Titans this year, but that's a very noisy stat, only 3 weeks in. And then for the Bengals, it's basically Hayden Hurst. And yes, Will Cox is there. He did outsnap Hurst last week, but he was dealing with a bit of a groin issue. Still only 1 target per game. I'll definitely take the guy with the near 14% target share, seeing 5 targets per game, but to be honest, unless one of these starters score, they're not going to pay off their price points. So it's either going to be touchdown or bust, or you better hope everybody else just sucks in this game in that price range, and maybe like 6 to 7 points will get you there, but you'll probably need the touchdown to make it worthwhile. As far as the defenses are concerned in this game, not overly excited about it. The defenses have actually been pretty appealing the past few showdown slates because the totals were low, the quarterbacks weren't that great. But in this game, I like the offenses here. 47 point over-under is a lot better than the 38s and 39s that we have seen. So I'll give some more respect to the offenses here and probably be pretty low on both defenses. But if I had to pick one, I think I would have to choose the Dolphins just because Burrow, he's been a little bit prone to the turnovers this year. So, I mean, I could see going either way. I mean, if Tua happens to miss by some chance, yeah, the Bengals $3,200 versus a backup, that'd be more appealing, but as of right now, I don't know the information. I'm assuming Tua is playing, but not really excited about either defense. The kickers, though, I actually think Evan McPherson's a pretty good flex play on this slate at only $3,600. We know he's got the leg talent for it. Not that it really matters too much. It's just about putting the kicker in the right position. But they do have the higher implied team total. They're playing at home. I think he'll certainly be in scoring position more. And if you're looking at the projections I have, I mean, he's clearly projecting as a not so bad play. So when we run the optimizer, I am imagining he's going to be popping quite a bit because at $3,600 opens up your lineup a bit. And I feel like he's got a safe bet to at least get you a handful of points with some near double-digit upside. And moving back over to our lineup, please don't copy and paste this. I'm building 150. I don't know which one I like the most. I just want to see what fits here. So we have just over $6,000 left. We already have T. Higgins in the Burrow pairing, so correlation-wise, that makes sense. We have Tua. I'd like to get a pass catcher with them. It's not an absolute must, but it would be at least nice to do so. So we'll plug in Waddle. He's questionable, but I think it's a safe bet he plays. So it's $4,200 left. We can throw in McPherson. He's $3,600. That's $4,900. You can get Mostert mixed in there. Not really a big fan of Dolphins defense, and you have Higgins in the captain spot, but you can certainly make that work. I think you could even make it work where you have Tyreek Hill and then you lose Mostert by 100, but it's pretty interchangeable. Obviously, you could throw in Jamar Chase. Many ways you can go, though. Lots of fun lineups to build, so don't just get stuck on one. And like I said earlier, I do it on the optimizer, and if you want access to the Opto, link can be found down below in the description. But I have no settings yet, no build groups, no randomness. If you are building 150, highly recommend taking advantage of that because you're going to want some highly correlated lineups. But we're going to build 150 here, and we're just going to see who's popping out the most. And we finally got our 152 crunch, and I'm not really too surprised at what I'm seeing. You are seeing a lot of the quarterbacks popping with their price points. Even despite there being so many good skill position players, I think it makes sense. Joe Mixon's really high at 67%. I think I might end up toning that down. I know he's $9,000, but I like the passing attack on both sides, so it seems a bit high for me. You don't always have to agree with the projections. A lot of Burrow captain, but that's mainly because of the price point. I would not have this low of Jamar Chase at 25%, but once I think you start lowering, maybe you got like Joe Mixon, obviously you wouldn't want to play that much McPherson. That's insane. But you definitely would want more Jamar Chase, and I don't think I see Jalen Waddle. So yeah, only 13% of the time. I definitely would have that much higher. So that's why I get to play around with it, but not too surprised at who's popping without any settings put in. With that being said, I wish you all the best of luck and try to throw some of that luck my way because, I mean, I got to deal with a hurricane, so hopefully it's not too bad. I am not on the bottom floor, so that should help me out a little bit, but it looks like we're going to have a lot of water. So not going to be the best, but hopefully it all works out in the end. But I hope you guys all smash on the Showdown slate. Hopefully nothing too crazy happened by the time I posted this, and let's hope for some internet.